when we look at, say, I think about this in terms of a visual language that I've kind of been raving about, where if you have this sequence of nonverbal symbols that I'm doing every moment continually, um, these symbols, if we think about them as the pattern, there are these uh, almost like higher level patterns where as you see these things, you can extrapolate the through line. Like what's an example is that if I get up and I walk over here to pick this up, and then I sit back down, right? Then there is in each of those still frames, like let's say I stopped here and then I'm sitting back down, and there's in
Sure.
all these still frames, which just played out,
Hmm.
um, the coherent through line is that I'm going to pick this up, right?
Sure.
And however, there's also in a larger time sense, you could think about this as being nested within a larger action, which is this conversation I'm having, right?
Yeah.
And then that could be nested in an even
The,
larger pattern of behavior,
everything. Yeah.
an even larger, maybe even like a larger spirit, which I'm enacting, right?
Hmm.
And you can ascertain these subtler and subtler patterns, which gives you a higher
A
and
very
higher
interesting.
perspective on what's actually right in front of you,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that would be connected ultimately to the idea of angels and the logos, or spiritual beings or whatever, in that these patterns which are playing out through people, like I think about the highest level patterns, the most subtle ones that you can ascertain would be like the operation of spiritual forces working through people, and it goes up the hierarchy or also down, like where you could see a demon in somebody, you could see that somebody's clearly possessed or something, or or
Hmm.
or you could see that somebody's embodying a virtue, like actually in the hierarchy of spiritual beings, one of the ranks is called like the virtues or something, right? So then,
Hmm.
and then ultimately this would go all the way up to the highest beings in the spiritual hierarchy, which would ultimately get to the Trinity, or something, or like maybe the logos, such
Hmm.
that we can actually, there are people who you can see who are embodying the logos, and they are performing the will of God, basically. The will of God happens through them, and
Right.
so this is kind of where my mind went in reading about or in learning about the Markov
Yeah.
models. Yeah, compress the data effectively in any given circumstance to see the higher level patterns that are playing through the person in front of them.
Hmm.
Think about like maybe there's particular motions, like somebody might make a little flick of their a
Yeah.
slight
And
little
you can
smile, and
infer a
that's like,
lot.
yeah, and that's like
Yeah.
a star in the constellation. It's like that's the meaningful part that you have to remember, like that one moment. It's like
Hmm.
a shining still frame amongst the other still frames.
Yep.
There are ways that things tend to happen, right? Like, and there requires a certain degree of discernment. The modal shift can definitely be overwhelming in that, like, this blooming, buzzing confusion of information.
And before you
Are,
develop the skills, I'm sorry, in and out
no,
real
no,
quick.
no, yeah,
Before you develop the skills, right, you can't distinguish that. You don't know when you're going too far or when you start seeing noise as signal, right? And then before you know it, you've lost the plot. And then that's when you see someone, that's where the archetype of the crazy schizophrenic person,
yeah.
into someone's mind, that's what you become, right?
Hmm.
Because it's only your associations. Like that hand flick sticks out to you because it
Yeah,
reminds you of the other hand flicks you've seen, and then you go down that rabbit hole, right?
yeah, you can recognize the pattern. Yeah, there's this balance left and right, and then that creates this resonance,
Hmm.
but then that can be overwhelming. So you have to balance how much of that you can handle in like
Yeah.
in ever way where you become
I have a very visceral, like, real life experience where that resonance became so overwhelming that I think when you start doing that, people start noticing, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like it attracts attention because it
yeah,
pulls energy. Like,
yeah, and also you probably start doing things that like people might, I don't know, let's say crucify you for, like,
yeah,
and he who
yeah,
would live shall live against all odds. Remember we were talking about chance and probability? It's
yeah.
like things will, quote, like things that appear miraculous, like will happen for
Mhm.
somebody who's really uh oriented and in that proper relationship, like it's Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like, you will like the cops won't pull you over or something, but then again, I know what you mean. Where in
Or they'll pull
sometimes
you over and like,
eventually,
I remember one time there's a pragmatic kind of application there, right?
yeah,
And
it's like
in
how
that,
do what does it look like to consulate effectively, and like how might we cultivate this ability?
yeah,
And one would be um, just the simple act of like relaxation and focus, basically,
yes,
such that
clearing
because
your mind.
yeah, part of the idea is that you don't want to miss important things that happen. Like if somebody makes that little flick of their,
Hmm.
like maybe they flare their nose or something.
You don't want to be looking over there, right?
Yeah, you want to be receptive to the phenomenon around you, and
Mm,
like focused on what's in front of you. And um, he once spoke about this um, this type of meditation that they have in the East, which is called tatrata or tatrata, something where you look at a candle flame, and it's like to train your focus basically. And
mm-hmm.
I think that's can be a useful thing. It's how do you not get distracted by the thoughts that can cloud your mind when you're in conversation with someone. That's the context I always think about constellation is like when we're with each other. But obviously, just in your day-to-day events, it's like if you're going about your event, meaningful synchronicity or just happens in your
Yeah,
life, how do you not miss it? And
I
so
I
maybe
think
it'd be good to carry a notebook as well or something. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is kind of what I alluded to earlier about how I think that familiarizing yourself with um, the patterns of reality is helpful in this respect, and that can be done through um, things like the Bible, and like where we look at the ways that things tend to happen,
yeah,
like understanding the narrative patterns. And then it kind of goes with what I was saying about focus. It's like you got to keep your eye on the ball. I do think that what I've been talking about is like a phenomena which is kind of arriving in that like we like it's been right in front of us this whole time, but suddenly we'll realize um the extent of
what's to
how
come.
the like the true heights of nonverbal communication, I suppose. Like one way you could say is like that girl
Yeah,
in that video is doing, if we want to use Steiner terminology, just because he has a word for it, is that girl is doing eurythmy, and um, eurythmy is important to the evolutionary process, basically. And like, if we're in to use that term, just because Steiner has a nice word for it, uh,
mm-hmm.
and like we're all doing eurythmy all the time, but here in this video, it's like really on display. It's like that's the focus. Is like the the expressiveness and the true the oh my god, it almost brings me to tears. Just like the depth and the thickness of each little movement.
Everything,
It's
right?
like yeah,
Yeah,
dude, I gotta show you this.
show me.
Check it out. Yesterday, I'm not sure if you know, but I do Amazon delivery.
I did not know that.
Um, Yesterday I'm driving around and I see a bunch of stuff next to the street. You know how people leave things if they want people to take it? Look what I found. Look at this. Bro,
What the hell? That is
bro,
gorgeous.
dude, it's a Christian freaking astrologer. Look at this.
A Christian astrologer?
Look at
That's hilarious, man.
dude.
Whoa.